did you say this was again? Because I immediately had made the connection 20 years previous, what I had done in Korea. There was a solace that came over them, knowing what had happened to his uncle. There wasn't a casket, it wasn't anything other than a large kind of aluminum or metal box, if you will. I just simply think it's woven into the fabric of our nation. My name is Josh Davis. I'm a retired First Sergeant in the United States Army. I was proud to serve 28 years in the military, entering my service, Fort Benning, Georgia, and also retiring at Fort Benning, Georgia. I originally enlisted as infantryman, paratrooper in the United States Army, where eventually I cross-trained as a sniper, cross-trained as a medic. Throughout my time in the military, I had the distinct pleasure to be stationed and a part of the United Nations Command Headquarters, partnered with the 8th U.S. Army in Korea, in South Korea. During that period, I was selected to be a casket team leader and helped repatriate 11 sets of remains from the Korean War. It's a unique period in history between May of 1998 and I think September of 1994, who we refer to diplomatically as the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, we know as North Korea, unilaterally returned 208 sets of remains from the Korean War. I received a phone call, I think late August or September of 2012, from a staff official at Army Headquarters G1, and it was a notification for the repatriation and burial of a member of the Korean War. At the time, 20 years later, you can imagine my reaction. The hair stood up back of my neck, all over my body, and I asked who was going to be my partner, who did you say this was again? Because I immediately had made the connection 20 years previous, what I had done in Korea. And as she explained and walked me through who this individual was, his name is Sergeant Chester Williams, who also has a very unique story, that he was somebody who had been reported as a POW, an MIA, and recently, in August, his identification was confirmed through DNA, scientific, and historical evidence. Then it would be my honor to accompany her to meet with the family and arrange for burial 62 years later from his disappearance. I don't know of any other connection with any other soldier as a casualty officer who was a part of that 208 in the early 90s, and then subsequently, buried one of those individuals, over 20 years later, from the time I spent in Korea, repatriating our fellow service members. In the summer of 1991, when we were tasked with the repatriation of 11 sets of remains, we were partnered with 2 members of the ROK Army, 2 members of the British Army, and we spent time in Panmunjom in the joint security area where the transfer of the remains, right across the DMZ, standing shoulder to shoulder to our North Korean counterparts to receive what we referred to as these transfer cases. It wasn't a casket, it wasn't anything other than a large kind of aluminum or metal box, if you will. Yeah, so I met Sergeant Williams' family with my partner from the Army G1 staff, and they had been working this process for years. They spend a lot of effort staying connected with, the primary next of kin. They take DNA samples, they take any historical accounts, letters, anything and everything to help. And I'll tell you, excuse me, in listening to his story, he has very fond memories of his uncle, who worked at Conneaut Park, which was an amusement park in Pennsylvania. And he had very fond memories of his uncle bringing him to the park to enjoy the park while he worked the park. And so for him, he had that personal connection, even though his mother, other family members had passed on. He was obviously very committed and connected emotionally to understanding what happened to his uncle. What's impressive about this story, Sergeant Williams enlisted in the military and served in World War II prior to his time in Korea. He served his time. I believe he was assigned to the infantry as a communications specialist. We referred to them as wire dogs. They were the guys running wire for the radios. After his service in World War II, he returned home back to the Conneaut Park. And his best friend had stayed in the military. And subsequently, years later, was called up for service and deployed to Korea, where he passed away. And Sergeant Williams was so moved by that, he re-enlisted in the military and volunteered directly to go back to Korea. I'm told there was a solace that came over them, knowing what had happened to his uncle, and having the opportunity to bury him and pay those respects.